Now, Savo Island, because so many ships were sank there, we call it Iron Bottom Bay. But if you go straight north up to Kabul or around Truk, this whole street of islands are, we call the shaft going north. And those where the enemy came down, that's where they come down to. Or they'd be going up north. It was the shaft going north or south. And America's ships were all down at Naomi, which is another 100 miles south. So that's the way that distance between the two was. Now, as a result of this particular battle, the USS San Francisco and the 13 ships, now Japanese was coming down to bombard. This is some good luck. This is where we had some very, very good luck. The Japanese were coming down with two huge battleships, the Hialeah and the Hiroshima. Now, those are major ships with large that Chris Starling just talked about, and they had bought fires. But there's a difference here because they came down and they prepared to bombard Guadalcanal. And in the bombarding of Guadalcanal, behind them also was four ships with troops, ready to land another 20 or 30,000 troops at Guadalcanal. Now, this is what the program is all about. So we had these two battleships coming down in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and our ships, the 13 with Gallagher and Callahan, clashed together right in the middle. Now, what happens when you do that? You can't, it's a pitch black night, you can't see a ship in front of you. All of a sudden, they discovered that we were there, and they turned the searchlights on her. Admiral Callahan, that's our first target, and that's what it was. But let's go a little bit more. They were prepared to bombard Guadalcanal. That meant they had these 1,000-pound shells, and one big, they had lots of them. They could do it for 2 hours. And when the bombardment shell hit the ground, it explodes, and shrapnel goes in all directions. They can mow down trees. So they decided that they would use what they have in their trains because they didn't have time to go into armor piercing. If they had armor-piercing shells, they would have been able to sink the San Francisco with one slug. But no, we got the other ones. We got all the bombardment shells. And consequently, as a result of that, we had a lot of men wounded. A lot of men were wounded, a lot of men were killed. We had over 250 casualties in the middle of the night because of this clash of these ships together. Now, and that clashing come together. Now then, what happens when this goes on? How do you live with men on different levels? You don't have any flashlight in your pocket. You're in dark out conditions because you do not have lights. The San Francisco had been getting a lot of hits, and as a result, our communication system to other ships was dead and gone. And one slug came into the harbor and into the command center, and it killed Admiral Callahan. It also killed Case and Young. It also killed quite a number of other men. I'm going to go into that a little bit more. And so that is what happened in the middle of the night. Now, the battle kept on going on, and now if you have 250 men that are casualties, that means bodies are laying all over the place. Now my activities came active because I'm part of the medical department. And all of a sudden, 1 hour, down from 4 levels up, they carried one man down near my station where I was at the time, which was near the post office, and they laid him on this bench where you write post notes. And that was in front of the officers' quarters, you might say, same deck. And so I talked to him to try to consult him a little bit. I didn't know who he was. And as a result, I discovered later on that was Captain Case and Young. And he went into the officers' quarters because the main room in there becomes an operating table with bright lights that they can use in emergencies. And so our doctor and 2 corpsmen was there for 2 hours trying to save his life. They were unsuccessful. Now that also meant, and this was the right thing to do, of course, that they had a lot of other men laying around all over the place that needed attention. So I remember one man I got a hold of, and he talked to me a little bit, and he says, he gave me this phone number, write it down. Very slowly, he gave me the numbers. He says, call my mother. I said, I'll do that right away. And he gave me the number again, and I wrote it down. I didn't write it down. It's in dark. I didn't have a pencil in my hand. But I didn't want to tell him that. 10 minutes later, he died. That's the way people happen in this area. Now then, Afterwards, in the morning, comes another situation. We have been going, the command center had been shot out. Everybody in there was killed. In a command center like this, you have two very, very important men besides the captain and the gunnery officers and so on, and the admiral. But they were all dead. But they had one man that was the chief quartermaster. He's at the wheel, telling them where the ship's going to go. And he too was shot. But they have a second one with him also, because he's a young kid that makes the notes to make sure that they get the right orders, go left, go right, go here, go there, in the middle of the night. So the quartermaster is there to have someone to help him not to make a mistake. Well, the minute that this particular chief quartermaster was killed, what do you think the kid did? He grabbed the wheel. His name was Floyd Rogers. I'll never forget him, Floyd Rogers. You can read about him when you read about this. Floyd Rogers, a young kid, 20 years old. He was a third-class quartermaster. That meant he was brand new at that game. All of a sudden, he's looking around there, and the ship is in the black dark, islands all around. He didn't know what to do. He slowed it down as best he could. He put it in circles. About that time, Jack Bennett, he was busy putting out the fires down on the main deck with Reinhard Kipler. And he was his first-class division officer. And he was a boatswain mate. Anyway, Reinhard Kipler died because he got a wound in his leg, and while he's putting out fires, he just passed away and died. That bothered Jack Bennett a great deal all of his life. But then he came up, he said, looked around, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, or there about 3 o'clock, the ship is going in circles. That doesn't look right. So he dashes up 4 decks to the command center. And here's bodies laying all over the floor, and Roger on the wheel, petrified, doesn't know what to do. Nobody tells him what to do. He doesn't have an officer around, and Floyd Rogers was almost insane, but he did the best he could. And Jack Bennett looked over, and way, way away, could see a little flicker of light. But we couldn't flicker back, but a flicker of light way over there. Now, was that a Japanese ship or an American ship? Well, let me tell you the story, because this is a pretty good one. Anyway, Jack grabbed a flashlight, a 5-cylinder flashlight on the wall, and he aimed it at that ship way over there, a long ways away. And he flicked it out, and he flicked it, CA-38. That's our number, the USS San Francisco, Cruiser A-38. CA-38, 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 CA-38. All of a sudden, they answered back. It's the Helena. And then they got the message that we had no officers aboard and we need help. And so the Helena was a light cruiser, and they came over to give us support. And the captain says, we'll take command. We'll guide you. And so that's how we got help. This submarine, of course, is out in the water where we were in that particular part of the water, Okinawa area, and so on. And as a result, a ship was going by, and somebody sunk it. And a lot of men were in the water. Great number of men was in the water. And the submarine came along, and the rules in the submarine is you never pick up a man that's in the water. That's the duty of the destroyers or another ship. You cannot bring them aboard. Well, Jack talked to the captain. He said, let's make an exception to this one. I want to do it. And he talked the captain of this ship to do it. And what happened, Jack put a big rope around his waist, he dove in the water, and the captain, the boatswain mate, did the same thing. So both of them went in the water, and they rescued 22 men. And they had to push them back up the side of the submarine in order for them to get aboard. It was a very difficult thing to do, but it took 2 men to do it. And as a result, the story goes on. They had 22 men. And now I'll tell you the other part of the story, because Jack told me the story. He says, some years later, and these men all came from Australia, the coast out there, the western coast of Australia. And he said, they invited me to come to a memorial event. And so I did. And when I went to the memorial event there in Australia, I met the children of all these 22 men that I saved. He says, that's the first time in my life I had tears. It was so touching to me. And that's the kind of man Jack Bennett was. So Jack Bennett was a great officer. We had a lot of great officers. That's what made the military what it is today. And I'm very, very proud to be part of them and helping them in their life. And that bell was taken off to San Francisco because I had a little article from a shipmate, that they were unions from Philadelphia, where the ship was decommissioned. They took the bell off and they gave it to the crew of the USS San Francisco that was there. And they were coming out to San Francisco for the reunion where we have every year. And consequently, they left the dark bell sitting right there. And it wound up in the San Francisco Museum. Yeah. That's where it was. So been there for years and years and years. I had lunch one day, having lunch one day with a Naval Order crowd, and I talked to a man named Bob Combs, CEO of MBS, and I talked to him about the bell. I said, but now it's got to be melted down and somebody use it for iron. And he says, no, I know where the bell is. I said, oh my gosh, tell me where it is. He says, it's in the museum down here in San Francisco at Fisherman's Wharf area. So I went down there in the basement in the corner there, it's that. Holy catfish, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I says, I want the bell. Oh, you can't have the bell. I said, sure I can, it belongs to me. You don't belong to me at all, get out of here. They're almost gonna throw me out. Well, I never give up. So I went to Mike Myatt and I said, Mike, you gotta help me. He wanted a bell, he wanted a bell. He didn't know he was gonna get a real good bell, but when it was available, sure he wanted it. So he put political scenes on them and they would give it to us on a loan basis for 1 year. So we agreed to have it. So he gave it to us and he brought it here on supply with Mike Myatt's help. Now then, the bell was there, and after 1 year, the museum wanted it back because it was just there loaned to us for 1 year. I told them to go to hell. It's our bell. And on top of it, the bell has got to be in safe quarters, day and night, 24 hours a day, and that's where it's been ever since. And it's down here in the Marine Memorial Club today.